to introduce someone very special to you. Our host for the evening is a gentleman called Keith Fraser. Keith is a wonderful man. He's a public speaker. He is a YouTube broadcaster. He is a huge supporter of Grief Encounter. And he's known for interviewing a wide selection of celebrities, including Ross Kemp, Alistair Campbell, Nigel Farage, Lennox Lewis, the list goes on. Please, can I ask you all to welcome the man who has played a key part in bringing tonight together, the very versatile Keith Fraser.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. Before I introduce our guest for the evening, I'd just like to share a couple of words on why this charity means a lot to me, and particularly poignant for tonight, because I remember when I was about 8 years old, sitting on the bottom of the stairs in my the house that I grew up in Hendon, and big Arsenal supporter. And I remember saying to my mum, nagging my mum, saying, "When will Daddy take me to Arsenal?" And my mother said to me, "Keith, he's too ill. He's not well enough to take you to Arsenal." And I remember being tearful on the bottom of those stairs. And of course, he was too ill. He died when I was 14. And the thing is that many people are unfortunate enough to have that story. But what they are fortunate enough nowadays to have, which I didn't have, was this charity, Grief Encounter. So I'd like to give a big round of applause for the charity. Of course, you're not really here to hear me. We have here an unbelievable guest. He's a legend. He's a sporting legend, a football legend, but most importantly, he is an Arsenal legend. Please let me introduce, I should say, to the Arsenal legend and gentleman, I must add, Mr. Arsene Wenger. I know you're a Bob Marley fan. I want to go straight in, Arsene. I know you said I can call you Arsene. I've been hounding you for ages, calling you Mr. Wenger, but tonight I can call you Arsene.
No.
I'm going to go straight in, really, because down the road from here, there's a job going. Pays quite well, I hear. I don't know if you fancy it. It's the Arsenal job. What do you think? Would you go back?
No, I've done, I've given my life for 22 years, and I would say I've given my brain as much as I had, my body and my heart. And my heart is still at the club. They don't need my brain anymore, they don't need my body anymore. So I keep suffering, and of course, every time when we don't do well, I suffer, because I think it's 22 years in a life is something exceptional in our job.
Is that a yes or a no?
So that is a no.
Okay. It's interesting, though, because you read in the papers that there's all sorts of political shenanigans going on at the club. If I was Stan Kroenke, I would be phoning you up saying, "Arsene, get in there, run the show." I believe everyone would fall into line with you. Everyone has huge respect for you. Did you never fancy that?
Well, I would say I wasn't asked, So, I just think for me, Arsenal, when I arrived, was a club with a touch of class, who had a way to behave that was built on respect and desire to be exceptional. And I think that was recognized, and that's what I tried. I was very proud when I arrived at Arsenal to be at this club. And I tried always to guide the club by respecting these values. Together was a special togetherness with the fans, there was a special togetherness at the board, and slowly it became a bit more difficult because football has changed. And so overall, I think before you build a team, you build a club, you know, and the club is built on values. And after that, you get everybody at the club to respect these values. And that's why I think it is important to come, when you say important to come back to basics, I think that's what it is really about.
If they'd have called you in a caretaker role to the end of the season, is that something you might have considered?
Well, I think, you know, once I never envisaged, when I stayed, when I was at Arsenal, I turned so many things down because this club was my project, and I accepted to stay when we built the stadium with less money, knowing that life will be much more difficult. And when you look at the results of the club, I arrived in the middle of the season, 96. Until 2004, we were first or second. After, in 2005, we won the FA Cup. After we moved in the stadium in 2006 to 2014 were very difficult years financially because we had huge amount of money to pay back. And so every season we had to sell our best players. And during that period, I stayed faithful because I committed to the club to get this period through and build the stadium and pay it back without any penny from outside. Today, when I left the club is in a good financial situation. They are very strong, they have money, they spend a lot of money this year because there's money now. And so it's just now to, what I think, get back to what Arsenal is really about and to make the right decisions technically.
Can I ask you though, because obviously one of the reasons, the vision for building a new stadium was to make sure that the club was an elite club, being able to compete at the elite. It hasn't quite worked out that way. What I wanted to ask you is, do you think if we would have shelved the stadium project in all those years, your second half of your tenure, would we have continued winning the trophies?
Well, I think when we decided to go for the stadium, at Highbury we had 38,000 people. When we decided to build a new stadium, we moved to 60. So we thought that to prepare the future, you cannot turn down 22,000 people every 2 weeks, you know, and that the potential for the future would be to have a bigger stadium. What we did, but in between you had Man City coming in, Man United, Chelsea, who spent a lot of money, and we were in a weaker position because we had at the time to pay 22 million per year back. No, that means that has to be profit at the start. Before you start the season, you had to pay that back. And in between now, the television money has become much bigger. But anyway, it was a challenge because the stadium was in the end more expensive than expected. Because we had to pay over 128 million for the land, and you can calculate, when we built the stadium, you calculated the price of a stadium, it's £40,000 a seat. So when you move £4,000 a seat, you move that, multiply by 60,000, it's 240 million, plus the land. So it was approximately 420 million, you know, and you have to pay that back.
I'd like to go back to the beginning, or in fact a little bit before, because Arsenal hadn't won the league for many years when I was growing up. And then there was a certain night in 1989 where Arsenal scored a goal in the final minute of the final game of the season. And I know you're an Arsenal fan now, but back then, did you see that game?
Yes.
Close question's always the best. But I mean, when you watch that game, what did you think? I mean, did you think to yourself, I'd like to manage that club one day? They've got tremendous foundation. Because they broke the Merseyside monopoly.
No, there's two coincidences in my life. The first is that I managed only red and white clubs. And incidentally, I'm making a book at the moment, and that says my life in red and white. And of course, Arsenal is the biggest part in that. But I made as well 7 years in Monaco. That is the longest ever in Monaco. So when I'm somewhere, I don't leave, you know. But it's as well Arsenal is the second coincidence, you know. So I thought maybe that's my fate. So I think, you know, when you have to give your whole energy to do your task where your fate has taken you. And that's what I try to do. And I must say, I love England. I love the passion for the game in England. I love the fact that England is a population who has courage, a quality that I like a lot. And so overall, I stayed in this country. Even today, I don't manage anymore, but I still live in London.
And of course, going back to that team, you turned up in 96, I believe. Was it 96?
96 in October.
Yeah. When you turned up and you saw the backbone of the team, the defence, did you think, I can make these guys into champions pretty quick?
No, I think Arsenal hasn't won the championship for a while, you know, and people forget that I had exceptional players, especially players who loved Arsenal, especially players who wanted to do it for the club. And this generation was people who wanted to play for the club and wanted, of course, a good contract, but Arsenal had a meaning for them. But they were all over 30, what people forget. And when I looked at the squad, I thought, I have 9 players over 30 years old. That means the lifespan of this team is very short. And for a manager, it is the most sensitive case, because one after the other, you have to tell them, you're too old. You know what they try to do? They want to kill you. So to survive with a team who is that age I knew that would be very difficult. And the second challenge was to recreate a team with the same quality or even higher quality. Because when you speak about the defense was Dixon, Bolt, Adams, Keown, Winterburn, but the team who was invincible was Lauren, Colo, Campbell, and Ashley Cole. You know, what people forget. We had to rebuild completely the defense, and it was an exceptional defense, not a normal one.
I want to get to that because, in fact, one of the guys in the audience here, Ben Harmer, asked this question, but I was going to ask it anyway. Because when the rear guard started to reach the age that it wasn't going to be able to perform at the level it had, you had to look at replacing them. And there was one transfer which I think, and I know you all know what I'm going to say, there's one transfer which, when I saw it on the back of the Evening Standard, I thought, wow, which was when you signed, of course, Sol Campbell. I mean, how did that happen? How did you honestly think that you were going to get him?
Well, Sol Campbell was free, and we met many times at David Dean's house. It was at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. He walked along the Totteridge Pass, public pathway, to hide from people. And we agreed in March, and it never came out. Sol didn't talk to anybody. I, myself and David Dean and Sky Andrew was his agent at the time, and when I made the first press conference to announce Sol Campbell, there were only 3 journalists because they thought it was for a young player. And I must say, they were absolutely amazed when I walked in with Sol Campbell.
I mean, even to this day, I still cannot believe. I mean, there's obviously, I hope there's no Tottenham supporters in the audience, and there may well be. But it was just the most utterly audacious signing. I don't think it could happen today, could it?
It would be much more difficult. There's more transparency, there's more information today, there's more people around the players. You know, today the players are surrounded by many people, and it's more difficult to keep things tight. Yes, there's a demand for information, and it would be much more difficult today, because even when a player goes from one place to the other, you're always located somewhere. But it was really an interesting case, because Sol Campbell suffered after that, you know, from some burnouts, because he couldn't go to some places where he used to go, and it was not easy for him.
Absolutely. And just coming on to the way you changed British football, because you're renowned for changing the face of the game here. You know, there were used to be in the 90s, a lot of Arsenal fans used to see this sort of like kick it upfield and just run after it. When you came into British football, English football, what gave you the inkling, or that you thought, I can change the face of the game here, I can implement something new, something refreshing? Did you just knew that was what you're going to do?
Look, I believe basically a manager is a guy who has a clear idea of what he wants to do. After, he needs to have the capacity to formulate it properly, to make it understandable. After, he has to put his ideas into practice, but to show everybody that it works. And after that, he has to get from the players to own his ideas and to accept that, you know. And that's why this job is interesting on that front. It's not only intellectual, it's practical. And it is as well something that makes you very humble and very rigorous, because if you ease a bit off, 3 days later, you lose a game. Even if you don't ease off, you lose a game sometimes. But it is a very good school for suffering, good resistance to stress. But it's as well, I come from a little village. I never could dream to spend my life in football, you know. I was educated in a village where I couldn't even dream that you could be a football player. My destiny was to work in a farm, and I ended up spending my life in football. Why that? I don't know, but I had a certain way to think about the game, and I had a certain way to push that through. And I was the youngest manager in France, and I finished the oldest in England. So that means I did survive in this job, but I cannot tell you really why.
I've got to correct you on one thing. You didn't only spend your life in football. You spent your life in the best football club in the world. Is that right, everybody?
Yes.
Not that I can stand, but, you know, correct you, of course. It's interesting, Arsene, because you revolutionized the game. People doubted you from the beginning. Many people, I think even the newspaper said, Arsene who?
Yeah.
You must be a very self-assured, confident person. But is there any kind of negative talk under there, any kind of self-doubt over the years? There must have been, no?
Self-doubt, yes. It's quite interesting, because we are tonight at a charity where you have many people who suffered, you know, a lot when you lose your parents or you lose your brother or sister. It's absolutely an unbelievable shock in life. But most of the sportsmen I met in life had huge suffering childhood. In the French national team, 98, you had 4 people who lost their brother, you know. And somewhere they found resilience in that setbacks, or peace in putting their energy into sport and transformed that into motivation that was exceptional. And Petit, Lizarazu, Deschamps, De Sailly, they all lost their brother, you know. And many times in sport, I noticed that top-level people had a huge suffering in their childhood, and they transformed that in a motivation. And it was appeasing for them to get in the club peace, discipline, and protection. And that's why they loved to be in a team and in a club, in that positive environment.
And of course, I guess those people you would call being successful in spite of what they went through rather than suffering because of.
Yes, of course. They transform that into a positive motivation. But we still have a lot to discover on that front. But what is for sure is that sport has to play a part and can help people to gain confidence and as well to help them to feel a positive environment around them, you know.
Do you think the crazy amount of money, certainly to the man on the street, that footballers earn, do you think that has contributed, or maybe even contributing to the loss of soul to a certain degree? I used to go to Highbury, and I remember my first season ticket in North Bank must have been about £35 or something. Has it lost its soul because of the money in the game?
It depends if your motivation is internal or external. If your motivation is internal, that means you have a drive to be good or the best. The money doesn't play, has not too much an influence. If your motivation is only external, that means motivated by a big car or a lot of money, yes, it doesn't help. So it's very important to identify what's going on there and who is motivated by what. The only thing I can say is that people who make a big career are usually people who have a good stamina in their motivation. They have a good tenacity to come back from setbacks, from disappointments. They don't give up and then continue to go. Then it is the hunger, what I call the hunger index is important in life, you know, and I believe that that is fluctuating a little bit. And too much money too early doesn't help to build the hunger index. And the second thing I would say is, on my experience, I believe that many people arrive in life relatively early at a very good level. But after they don't move a lot. They don't move a lot because they don't really ask themselves, what else do I want? Do I want more? Am I at full potential? Or sometimes because I have not a clear idea of where they could be, where they could go, you know. And I would say it's a little bit a disease, even in sport. Not many people reach their full potential or do everything in their life to be as good as they could be.
I want to come on to another subject, which is obviously you've had many successful years, and you read recently, only last season, the comparisons between the current Manchester City team, or last season's Manchester City team, with the Invincibles team, with the 1999 Manchester United team. Well, I take issue with that, because I went to most games in the 1999 season, and of course, our club was 1 point behind in the league, very close runners-up. I was at the semi-final replay when Dennis Bergkamp missed the penalty. Yes. It could so easily have been another double for you. Yeah. With Man United, okay, winning the European Cup only. That must rankle with you a bit, no?
Yes, we lost Nigel Winterburn in the last 10 minutes at Leeds. And I think that was a decisive game in '99. And as you said, we missed the penalty in last minute of added time in the replay, Dennis Bergkamp. That shows you how tight it is at the top level, and you have to accept, in life, unfortunately, you cannot always win. That's quite difficult to say. But what is important is how you live with defeat and how you bounce back. And the Greeks said already, it's not, you have to accept you cannot always win. It's the way you get up again that makes a man.
Well, of course, if there's one thing I agree with Jose Mourinho on, that is that, of course, people don't remember the one who comes second, and yet that year we were pretty damn good, right?
Well, I think I looked the other day at a little bit of achievement we have made in 20 years. It's difficult to become second in the league as well, We won 3 championships, 7 FA Cups, 7 Charity Shields. We finished 5 times second, 5 times third. And the rest, we finished 20 consecutive years in the top 4 with much less money than others. And but people want always more, and I think that is natural. But as well, I think I travel a lot, and Arsenal is a respected club all over the world. I go to Africa, to South America, to Asia, a lot in France as well. We have many, many fans who respect more than just the last game won or lost. That's why I come back to what I said, because we were known to give chance to young people who deserve it, because we have a certain art and way to behave, to act, and that is for me important as well.
I want to ask you a very cliche question. I'm sure everybody will be interested to hear this. Choosing from all the Arsenal players you had, of course, throughout the years. I'm sure you've been asked this before, but I'd love to know what if you could choose from any of them, going out to play Brighton tomorrow night, you can play any of them. What would your 11 be?
Well, that's torture.
Without hesitation.
That's torture. I will not tell you I like more one than the other one. All the Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, who are legends, of course, who are with the super talents, but the Van Persie, Fabregas as well, the super talents. What has changed, or the Vieira, or the Petit? What can you say?
That's the political answer.
I cannot tell you who. I like them all, because when you're manager, you don't have a preference linked with the talent. You have more respect for the guy who does the maximum with the talent he has, And the guy, for example, Lauren was an exceptional football player for me, But as well, you knew, or you could go anywhere in the world, he was ready for a fight. So you respect that. I would say when you're manager, you more love the attitude than the talent. Because life is, we have not all the qualities, you have all flaws, but at the end of the day, life is about making the maximum with what you have. And even when you're manager, I judge the managers more about does he get out of a team, knowing that if he does in the top 10, he has done a great job, But people only see the team who wins the championship.
I guess you give me the political answer rather than actually saying who you would pick the team, because you're politically correct. Have you ever thought about going into politics?
I played 1,235 games for Arsenal. I didn't sleep half of my life because I had to pick the team. And you try me to tell me to do that again. And when I arrived at the stadium, stadium, everybody had picked a different team than me.
we're going to come to some questions from the audience, which I've got already written down. But looking at the managers out there, if there's one manager you could say, I wouldn't have minded a bit of what he had to make me the best manager, even better than you were, who would it be?
I don't think about it like that. I think more about the mistake I made, you know, and I regret every error I made, every wrong transfer. Let's not forget, you know, I made 400 transfers during my stay at Arsenal Football Club. People don't realize what that means, but it means long nights, thinking, negotiating, fighting, and I regret every mistake I made. I don't want to be somebody else. I want myself to do as well as I can with what I have. And what I regret, the regret is the distance between what you have done and what you should have done. So, and that happened a few times to me.
I actually know the perfect manager.
Sorry?
I actually know the perfect manager in my own mind, who should be the Arsenal manager. He's utterly perfect, very righteous.
I think you shouldn't hide. You should go tomorrow to Arsenal Football Club.
I was thinking about that, but this particular man in my mind is very righteous. He knows everything. It's Piers Morgan.
Sorry?
Piers Morgan.
But
I jest, of course.
You know, that's people who have never been in the game. You don't consider their opinion too much.
Well, you can hear by the applause you've got what people think of your answer, of course. Look, I think we're going to go to some audience questions, if we may, because I know you're in a rush, and we're obviously very, very grateful for your time. I'm going to read out the names. There's one guy here in the audience, John Bashiri. He said, who's the greatest player ever?
Messi.
Not Maradona?
No.
It's interesting. I just got to say something to you, because I was having a chat yesterday.
That's only my opinion, but I'm not sure I'm right, and it's difficult to compare generations. But Messi has something that in every difficult situation, when you think he will lose the ball, he gets out of it and he creates danger. You know? And he can run with the ball and score. He can dribble and score. And normally, and the timing of his pass is right. He uses his running with the ball to make the pass at the right moment. He's creative in his passing, and he's creative in using his goal chances. So I think him and Ronaldo, for example, when we played in the Champions League final in 2006, he was injured. He couldn't play. But today in 2019, these guys played 13 years at the top, and they score 50 goals per year. You play in a pub team, it's difficult to score a goal, you know? When you score 50 every season.
But is it fair to say that Messi is very protected these days? He plays on much better pitches. Maradona and Pele, for example, they were literally butchered. Maradona, and the pitches were awful.
You know, I had the luck to manage Maradona when he was 50, but he was a genius, but an artist. That means he had a lifestyle that was not consistent. But he was an exceptional talent, but yet not the consistency of players like Messi. But he could create maybe something exceptional. But what I realized, even at 50, when I told him after the game, you were exceptional. He was like a child, you know. He was so happy that I told him he was great. So these guys, they have something special. They remain children somewhere. Because at the end of the day, it's playing. And what is interesting in our job is we speak to the child, we speak to the teenager. The child wants always to have fun. The teenager, for him, it's black and white. Are you a genius or are you an idiot? And we speak as well to the adult. The adult is a guy who lives with a compromise, a guy who can say, okay, I would like that, but I have compromise and face his responsibilities. A player is a little bit a package of all that. So we speak at different times to the three parties.
I was having a chat with somebody yesterday who's seen all the greats live, and he said to me the most talented player he'd seen was George Best. So,
yeah, George Best was like Maradona. You know, there's no difference between the artist and the player. And but George Best stopped to play at 28 years of age. So because their lifestyle was part of their personality and of the player.
I've got a question here from a Stephen Benson, who said you were close to signing and linked with many players: Alonso, Suarez, Vardy. He said, which one were you very close to signing, and which one do you most regret not getting?
Ronaldo. Ronaldo was very close, you know, a few days, and Suarez as well. But Suarez, I think he was never available for us.
Okay. And I've got Barney Rhodes. Interesting question. Do you think that Arsenal should go for a young, unproven coach, or go for a proven, experienced coach like Allegri or Ancelotti?
At the moment, I would say that they've put Freddie Ljungberg in charge. I support him, and I hope it's working well. If Freddie cannot stabilize the team, they have to go for somebody when it becomes dangerous, because you do not want to go down further, you know. Because when you look at after 14 games, you are quite a distance away from the top four. And if you cannot stabilize it in the next 5-6 games, then you need to put that to a guy who has experience. I wish that with Freddie now they take off and that we get some stability in the results, because what was very dangerous is that once you start not to beat the teams who are supposed to play in the second part of the table, that is a sign of alert. And once you get 7-8 games without winning, the confidence drops very quickly. And that's why the game on Thursday night for us is a very important one.
I've got a question here from Graham Goodkind, who's in the audience somewhere, I believe. You inherited a natural lead in Adams. Then you had, obviously, Vieira, Henry, Gallas, and Cesc as captains. How important is a captain for you? Or is it about collective responsibility, which you always used to say?
It's both. It's both. You know, the leaders in the team are people who get your values through to the dressing room. There's always unhappy people in the dressing room, and if you have leaders in the dressing room, they tell them, "No, come on, we don't tolerate that." It is when I speak about values, a football club is what you stand up for, you know, and complaining people in a dressing room are de-energizing a dressing room. So when guys start to complain, if you have leaders in the dressing room, they tell you, come on, stop that. If you have a problem, go to see the manager, but we don't tolerate that in the dressing room. So it is absolutely vital that we have people inside the dressing room who keep the cultures and the values of the club right, because the mentality, the motivation of a group is very fragile and goes very quickly. If you have a good captain, he makes you stronger in the dressing room. If he's against you, you will have problems to survive.
Arsene, I don't know how much time we have, and I know you're in a rush to go, but we actually have another very special guest in the audience here.
Fantastic.
Like yourself, he is an Arsenal legend. He captained Arsenal in the FA Cup to victory. And of course, he's somebody who you know exceptionally well, having worked with him for many years. I think I can call him up to the to the stage, I believe. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give a big hand for another Arsenal legend, Mr. Pat Rice. Have we got a third microphone? I think a standing ovation should be more than anything like that. Here, come on. Pat. Third mic.
You look great, Pat. You know, I had lunch with Keith Fraser.
I'm not going to see him tomorrow.
Can I say that it's an
sorry,
absolute...
I just would say, here we have a real legend. You know.
I'll give you my mic. Pat, you guys shared some of the best times at this fantastic football club. Do you miss him?
Miss him, definitely. Everybody misses him. I mean, to say he just, all the training methods all went out the window when this man came, and he just revolutionized everything. He was absolutely brilliant. And when you think of what he did, and when he first came, we were all going, Arsene who? No one, we never heard of this guy. Where did he come from? But that was all down to Mr. Dean and obviously Arsene himself. And we miss him even to this day.
First of all, I should ask you, I know we spoke on the phone, and I'm very happy to hear that you're back to good health. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've been clear of cancer now for 6 years.
Fantastic. And that's the most important thing at the end of the day.
You know that when I arrived, I had Pat Rice and Boro Primorac with me, who were two fantastically reliable people. And I don't need to say what a fighter Pat is, because when you speak about his disease, when I went to see him in hospital, you know.
I look good.
What was very interesting is as well the marvelous people he was surrounded by at hospital. You remember the nurse?
Yeah, sang to me, woke me up.
Who sang to you when she woke you up. Arsenal. And but he's an exceptional man.
I was. Thank you.
You've been at the club, obviously. You were at the club longer than Arsenal.
He still is.
Well, I know you were at Norwich the other day, right?
Well, I go, if I'm in the country, I go to all the home games. And I'll go to at least 95% of the away games. So I started off as a supporter. I bunked into the ground when it was at Highbury. And I'm still a supporter.
Do you, and yourself, Arsene, do you miss Highbury?
I miss Highbury, yeah. I do. I think it was the nostalgia. It was where the places where the kind of history of the club was more or less brought up, and also you were very, very close to the supporters as well. And I just thought it was great, and I know Arsene did as well.
I left my soul at Highbury. No.
We all did.
Even if we can be proud of the stadium we have built, because it was needed for the modern, but there was something at Highbury we never find back. That is that, as Pat said, the supporters close. When you took a corner, you could shake hands with a guy who was sitting at the corner flag. That's not the case anymore, so it was something special. And as well, Pat knows that even better than I do, is when I arrived, we were 80 at the club. When I left, we were 700, you know. It's not the same atmosphere. When you're 80, you know everybody, you're the husband, the children. When you're 700, you're in the lift, you don't even know people anymore who are in the lift with you. And that, of course, is on a human front, it's a big change.
Do you think, both of you, do you think that in a way it's a shame Arsenal has become very corporate? You have one owner, no disrespect, I know obviously you both know him. He doesn't have a football background. He's not an Arsenal fan. He's not like all of us with Arsenal in our blood. Is there an element of you both that feel, it's a shame?
I think it was inevitable that something like this was going to happen, because what with Abramovich being with Chelsea and the money coming into Chelsea, and obviously the people at Manchester City and the players that they were buying to actually compete with them, it couldn't be just the supporters alone. There had to be an injection from somewhere, and I just think that it's inevitable. I don't know whether, I wouldn't say it's the best thing, you know, but that's the way of the world, and that's the way it is.
Well, the world has changed. I remember I was in Manchester United. I said to the chairman of the Premier League, if you don't do anything about it, in 15 years, there's no English owner anymore in the Premier League. He laughed at me, but unfortunately I was right. And so I would say, to me, what has not changed in the last 20 years is the supporters. All the rest has changed.
The moaning might have got a bit louder.
No, the supporters are, in England, they are for life, you know, and all the environment of the game has changed. Some things for the good, because there's more potential, there's more money in the game, and we were in the game when you didn't earn the money, you know, today. And maybe what I believe is that the next generation should be, the players make so much money, but they should take over and take care of the game, because they will know the game, and they should work inside the clubs and maybe own the clubs in the future, because the money will go up again. It will double. In the predictions we have at FIFA, the money in football will double in the next 5 years. That means the players will become even more, will double their wages, because when the new money comes in, you know that part goes 95% to the players.
Yeah. I got a couple more questions, I think, just before we wrap up. The first thing is, obviously, with all you guys shared together, is the biggest disappointment not winning the European Cup, or the Champions League, as they now call it?
Well, it was a situation that we had no control over, because somebody who I think was culpable for the goal going in and Jens being sent off. If he had gone with the runner, you wouldn't have had the situation with Etu, and we wouldn't have to bring Robert off. So I think that was a big thing. I think that we, for me personally, one of the biggest things was when we lost the game against Manchester United. Whenever we should have took Giggs's leg off and stopped him from going past us.
Arsene, was that the biggest disappointment for you, not winning the European Cup with Arsenal?
Yes, of course. I have still, up to today, I had not the courage to watch that again, you know, because we had, in 2006, we didn't concede a goal in the qualifying, in the knockout stage. We didn't concede a goal, and we go in the final, and after a few minutes, we have that problem, you know, we play with 10 men. So what I regret is that we had not even the chance to play 11 against 11, because even with 10, we were close to win the game. So now I have more time. Many times I think, did I make the wrong substitutions? You know, it goes always through your mind. Should I have taken Fabregas out, Flamini in, and things like that? But I will watch it again now, because I still think the second goal is offside.
That brings us on to one thing we have to ask you about, because I know you were talking about it yesterday, is VAR. I mean, from where I'm a big tennis fan. And of course, you have Hawkeye, which tells you definitively the ball is in or out. Now, TalkSport and all these other mediums, they love talking about the same thing over and over and over again. And of course, VAR, we thought was going to come in to stop them talking about it over and over and over again. But it actually has got worse, because you end up spending longer for a decision, which we still don't know whether it's the right decision. Do you think they brought it in too soon? I mean, really, the technology's got to be even better, surely? First of all, to Arsene.
Well, personally, I personally think that it's taken the fun out of football at the present time, because I don't think that people. It always seems to be too long. You know, instead of, it seems to be, quicker in tennis. And it just seems to me as though with it, yes, it may save some people their jobs, and you would want that, because the last thing you want is, because the result's wrong, somebody loses their job. Nevertheless, it just seems to be so long. And that's what I think is the big talking point about it. And also, as I say, for me, it's all the fun that the supporters used to have and the arguments that you used to have in the pub. They've just wiped that out.
Over to you, Mr. Wenger.
It depends what you want. You want more accurate decisions. I think VAR gets you closer, because when you look at, it was 93% of the decisions right. Now we are at 97, 98. It's not perfect, because we are at the start of it. It has to be quicker. VAR people at the moment are not educated to take responsibility. They have no experience. And certainly there's room there for the former referees to work on that and to have a job to do it. In England, the system is a bit different, because you don't go to the monitor. And at the moment, the offside takes too long, In 2 years' time, the offside will be decided like a goal line technology. At the moment, it's manual. That means when the guy pushes, stops the image, you have only, in most of the clubs here, you have 25 frames per second. So if you choose one frame later, the guy has moved a little bit forward. So the offside at the moment is not guaranteed completely accurate. But in 2 years' time, it will be, and when it will be, the decisions will be quicker. The real question we have to answer, do we want to go back?
Or maybe wait until the technology is absolutely definitive.
Sorry?
Maybe wait until, like in tennis, but of course it's less subjective, where the technology is absolutely definitive in the answer.
Look, the main situation you had is Liverpool-Man City, when Alexander made handball or not, and on the other side, Liverpool scored. The VAR should have stopped straight away the game. He didn't do it. When you let the game go, of course, after when the team scores on the other side, you wonder why the VAR, and people question it. But normally, just not because there is a mistake in the decision from the VAR, you still have mistakes.
Maybe we needed VAR in the 2006 Champions League final. I mean, that spoiled the game, didn't it, for everybody? How you can have, I went to the game and thousands of Arsenal fans travelled to Paris, better than Baku, of course, but we all travelled to Paris only after 18 minutes to have our goalkeeper sent off. It killed the game. And I think that you're with FIFA now. I think that they need to do something. At the end of the day, it's a fan base. The fans are paying their money. To go to a game of that magnitude, have your goalkeeper sent off and spoil it for everybody, it just seems wrong to me. What do you think, to wrap up, both of you?
Well, I don't think there's anything that you can say about the referee, because it was a penalty. So, those are the rules. We all know what the rules are. As I say, for me, it wasn't necessarily Jens. I personally don't think it was his fault. I think it was somebody else's fault, and they should have tracked him instead of trying to play offside. And 9 times out of 10, it's we're usually good at playing offside, as you know.
Yeah, I agree with Pat. He's my boss now. He sits in the middle here, you know.
You know what, we've got to wrap up now. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, really, maybe we could sort of spend the whole day here talking with you guys, because I know that everybody has millions of questions we want to ask you. First of all, let me thank Arsene Wenger, of course, for being here. In fact, you can all stand up and show a bit of respect, of course.
Thank you very much.
And to Pat Rice, of course.